You're watching World Insight with me, Tian. Coming up in the program. With Biden in the White House, is it going to be business as usual between China and the U.S. or business as usual? Answers from the president of U.S. China Business Council, Craig Allen, right after these reminders. This is World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. U.S. President Joe Biden takes the steering wheel of the world's largest economy that's still reeling from a raging COVID pandemic. Unemployment remains high. 1 million Americans made jobless claims for the first time in January, though some sectors like housing are bouncing back. Across the Pacific, China reported a whopping 6.5% growth in the fourth quarter of 2020. And contrary to what former President Donald Trump set out to do, the U.S. trade deficit with China grew in the last 4 years. U.S. direct investments into China also went up. So how should the world's two largest economies engage with each other under a new U.S. administration? I asked Craig Allen, president of U.S. China Business Council. Let's hear his answers. Congratulations that you have a new administration, a new president coming into the office. But the question about China-U.S. trade relations remains. How much prospect do you see in that relationship for the next 4 years?
Well, the last 4 years have been very difficult and interesting, and U.S. exports have fallen dramatically over the last 2 years in particular. So we're coming off of a difficult period. I think that the next 4 years will be more predictable and more stable, with less government and political risk. That said, no doubt there will be many unexpected challenges as the two governments try to reach a new equilibrium. I think that that's quite a large challenge, and we'll have to see how that develops. But I do expect the Chinese economy to do well and American companies to remain interested in exporting and investing in China.
A lot of the misinformation about China-U.S. trade relations have been spreading over the past few years. And in fact, a lot of facts have been ignored. How much do you think the course will be corrected, at least in that regard?
Well, I think that the basic economic facts are well known. I think it's also true that the interpretation of the facts by the Trump administration did not always follow normal economic logic. One example of that would be the tariffs. Tariffs are not a good way to address trade problems or to reduce a trade deficit. So I think that a relook at the economic fundamentals underlying the relationship is well overdue, is very welcome, and will be helpful as we move forward. Now, that's not to say that there will be no problems. I fully expect different problems, but hopefully tariffs and continual confrontation will not be the approach that both governments use against each other. Rather, we should explore opportunities for collaboration and coordination as appropriate.
Mr. Allen, what do you think the business community that you are representing here in the U.S., the U.S. China Business Council, are looking in for the policies of this new administration? If they ask you, what advice or suggestion would you provide to them when they are coming into the office anew? What did you say to them?
Well, the U.S.-China relationship is big and important. China is our largest overseas market. Canada and Mexico are a little larger, but they're not overseas, and we need to get our policies right. The second thing that we need to address is that American companies don't appreciate the tariffs. By and large, both the import tariffs as well as the counter tariffs put on by the Chinese government have had negative effects for American companies. And therefore, we wish to see a lifting of the tariffs in the near term. But in return for the lifting of the tariffs, what we would like to see is greater market access in China, greater market liberalization. We do believe that opening of the Chinese domestic market to foreign competition would be good for China, would supplement and expand Chinese economic growth. And so we're hopeful that there will be additional agreements between the two governments and a rapid lifting of tariffs. But those should go together and as soon as possible.
But on the other hand, Mr. Allen, how much persuasive power does the business community have over the course of this new administration, which has to deal with a very divided United States and the political complexities of a country as big as the United States? Mr. Allen, I think that has become an increasingly interesting question, isn't it?
It is a very interesting question, and many ways to approach that question. While the voice of CEOs and presidents of companies are respected, it's really data about jobs and long-term economic impact and productivity that is really going to make the difference. I don't think that elite politics, if you will, the voices of corporate interests, is going to sway the new administration. Rather, arguments about jobs, about America's role in the world, about geopolitical stability, about increases in exports and the role of manufacturing and agriculture in our economy. That's what the new team is interested in. And I think there that China's positive growth story is quite compelling. We are looking at very rapid growth in 2021 and probably 2022. And American companies would like to be a part of that growth, and we wish to participate in the Chinese economy in a fulsome manner. I also have to note that when trade and national security issues intersect, national security issues usually win. And thus, we have to be careful about how we define national security.
That's right.
And ensure that economic security and economic growth is part of our national security calculus. And I hope that our Chinese friends do the same as well in Beijing.
The United States now really need to rebrand itself and also probably reposition itself, because after the past 4 years, the world really has been changing, and people's perceptions about the United States has also been changing based on quite some facts. So, Mr. Allen, how much will the earlier approach that the U.S. has, the U.S. business community has, and the U.S. government has toward the rest of the world, including toward China, still work? How much do you think inside your country it is also correct the course while testing the water period to know who exactly you are while you are trying to tell people, let's be who we are?
Well, I think that your question is interesting. About 200 years ago, a Frenchman by the name of de Tocqueville visited America. And he said in his book of 200 years ago that America's greatest asset was the ability to reinvent itself. And I think that that is profoundly correct. The United States has recently gone through an election that has led to a peaceful change of government and a shift in political parties in the Senate. And this is a new day that is dawning. And I'm sure that by the end of this day, that America will have rejoined, for example, the Paris Climate Agreement, and will have rejoined the WHO. That's a pretty good work for one day. So I think that the United States is based on democratic principles, and the will of the people will prevail. And we are seeing a new government come into place that I think that we should all wish to be successful and integrating and leading in the world. That is for the good of the world and the good of the United States. And we have the team in place, in my view, to accomplish exactly that. So let's see how this develops. And let us hope that it leads to a period of greater stability, prosperity, health, and peace for all.
If you think about over the past 4 years, of course, the U.S. took a lot of initiative that has changed the world. Of course, change itself probably even more. But at the same time, the world has also been shaping up their own logic as well, despite absence of the United States. China's RCEP, China-EU investment treaty, a lot has been going on, not to mention CPTPP, in which Japan and some of the other economies are leading the role. The WTO also needs to be reformed, but how, it's still up in the air. So my point is, Mr. Allen, how fast can the U.S. catch up? What is the best entry point for the U.S. to catch up?
The question of how the U.S. Should re-engage, I think, is an interesting one. We are going to rejoin the WHO and the Paris Accords on day one. So that's a very good sign, in my view. I think that perhaps on day 2 or day 3, you will see additional moves. The Biden team has made 2 what I think are compelling arguments about America's role in the world. Number one, that we need to ensure that the United States is strong, secure, and confident. And therefore, there will be an initial emphasis on tackling COVID appropriately. And I think that everyone would agree that that is a appropriate priority for the early part of the Biden administration. The second principle that the Biden administration is following is working closely with friends and allies. The United States has alliances going back to World War II or even before throughout the world, and those relationships are important, and they have not been well tended over the last 4 years. And so there's going to be an emphasis on working with those friends and allies in Europe, in Asia, and elsewhere. And I think that that's important. The United States alliance structure remains fully intact and as important as ever before. And so working with our allies to achieve our goals, I think, is an important step forward. Let's give this a little bit of time and then discuss in a month or 2 how different the world looks.
I would love to do that. In a month or 2, have another conversation with you to check about the realities. And finally, before we go, Mr. Allen, the unpredictability that has been there for years. And at the transition time, there's still also enormous amount. So how do you think a business community, the one that you're representing, should be able to adapt to all these unpredictabilities and prepare both for the best and also for the worst?
the business community has to be fully compliant with laws wherever they are.
Yeah.
And the American companies in China take great pride in following the law and being a good corporate citizen in China. And Chinese companies in America do the same. The problem becomes if there is a conflict of law, that if a Chinese company in America or an American company of China, as they try to follow laws in both countries, find that there is a conflict and they have to choose one or another, then you have a real difficulty that governments need to look at. It is in neither the Chinese government interest or the American government interest to create that situation. And indeed, I am hopeful that we will be able to diplomatically negotiate and work together to ensure that that doesn't happen or that it is at a minimum.
So, Mr. Allen, there's a lot of concern about unpredictability from the U.S. side, from investors, including those from China particularly.
Well, I think both Chinese history and American history have many episodes of unrest and uncertainty. In both cases, the center has held for many years. The center will hold. We're moving on to a much more, to a different administration. That's not to say that the problems will disappear. The United States is a democracy. Everything is contested. Everything is public. However, we have an unusual ability to reform and to adjust to circumstances. We have been doing that with the same Constitution for 240 years. And I think that you can bet that we will continue to do so for the next 240 years. The issue is, how do we interact with the world, and particularly with the other great power in the world, and that is China. And that is for us, for the American citizens and the citizens of China to decide. It is not chance. It is not fate. It is not coincidence. It will be decided by the good people of the United States and the good people of China. And I think that what we decide to do is to compete, to prosper, to grow stronger together. And that is not inevitable. That will take a lot of work.
Yeah.
But I think our diplomats, our militaries, our businesses, our people are ready for that, wish to avoid confrontation and to prosper together. And it's the job of governments to ensure that that happens. So that is the direction that both governments should head. And let us see if that is actually going to be manifest in the months and the years ahead.
Craig Allen, President of U.S. China Business Council. Always a pleasure.